Hello everyone, this is Frank DeFreitas and welcome to HoloTalk, the Internet's laser and holography talk show, enjoyed in over 42 countries throughout the world. And now, here's this week's show. Hi Colin, how are you?
I'm good. Oh, this sounds much better being on the landline.
Yeah, it's good. Why don't we start off first by having you tell the listeners a little bit about your forum to start off with, and I would imagine there aren't too many people who are already involved with holography who are not aware of the forum itself, but I imagine there may be some new people to holography and some listeners that have not visited. And there may also be some listeners who are not even aware of what exactly you do on a forum, an online forum. So maybe you could start off and tell the listeners a brief introduction to holographyforum.org or holographyforum.com. I think you have both domains, don't you?
No, I only have .org. Actually.
Okay.
.com is not available to me.
Okay. So tell everyone about the forum as far as what it is that you do and your participants do at the forum. What do you do when you go to a forum?
Well, perhaps we should start with why I chose to go seek a forum when I was learning to make holograms.
Okay.
I was starting to make holograms. Everything was really challenging to me. There was concepts I didn't understand as far as what pieces of equipment I might buy, as well as I didn't have a very good theoretical background as far as what I was doing and what I needed to do. And I went out on the Internet searching for things and found some great information on your forum, really your website, which led me to your forum.
I'm out of the forum business.
Well, you're out of the forum business now.
Yeah.
However, when I was starting holography, that was the only option to actually get a real person to say, you're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
And so for me, it became how I learned the trade, was to find people on the Internet and communicate either via a forum or via a private email. But I had no way of meeting anybody other than by contacting them on a forum.
Yeah.
And what a forum is on the Internet, and what a forum was for me, was a place to encounter people that were either at the same level I was or just slightly above the level I was, that were willing to trade information. And that's what we really do at Holography Forum, is we trade information with people. And there's people of every level. We have professional holographers. We have holographers that have only made one hologram. We have holographers that have not yet made a hologram and are still acquiring equipment.
Mm-hmm. It's a very nice mix.
It is. We're really lucky in that regard. At the beginning of the Holography Forum, we only had people at one level. And fortunately, there have been professional holographers to adopt us, and there have been new holographers to come in that have made it a very, what I would call a vital place to actually explore holography.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started the Holography Forum, I made a quote that, well, what is it that we want to do? And that is, this is a place to share ideas and experiences about holography. And I've really, strove very hard to actually make that a reality.
Yeah.
And, gosh, I don't know how long it's been. It's been 2.5 years probably.
Oh, really?
And more than 12,000 posts later.
Yeah.
That we've been together, and it's very rewarding for me. Anymore, I don't get the chance to answer people's questions as much as I really just maintain the mechanicals of the site and tell people, well, if your password doesn't work, this is why. But there's so many other people there that have more experience than I do that can answer the questions that I don't need to anymore.
You're actually one of the moderators.
I am. I am, and Michael Harrison are both moderators. And in I don't know, a more fundamental sense, I actually make sure that if the forum falls apart, that we have backups and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
More of a systems administration kind of standpoint.
Yeah, for anyone who would be listening from an online service similar to America Online that may be familiar with chat rooms, a forum could be considered a chat room in slow motion, in the fact that you're communicating back and forth with one another, but it's 24/7, and the posts stay there, and you reply to them, and you can go back and see what other people have replied to.
And that's what's really nice about it is, you're not limited to the people that are specifically listening to, at that moment. But, on our forum, I don't think I've ever asked a question that wasn't answered within an hour.
Yeah. Now,
so that's remarkable for such an esoteric subject as holography to actually have that many people focused on one spot. And we've managed to acquire some experts in a variety of fields. Dinesh Padir is an expert in DCG and has done mastering for banknote holographics, as well as owns his own company producing DCG holograms. And he's been more than willing to share theoretical insight as well as, specifics about DCG work. And then we run into people like Martin, who's been developing a photopolymer that he has available, as well as, he has read every patent I've ever encountered on holography and every patent from the beginning of photography on every chemical process, and is very good at answering questions about chemistry. And it's just really interesting to see how everybody, picks their own little influence on their understanding of holography and chooses to answer those questions. I tend to reserve my answers to questions regarding vibration analysis and table design because I have 14 years' experience as a musical instrument maker.
Yes.
And have a lot of background in vibrational dynamics and how that affects our work.
Oh, that's very interesting that you've been able to apply that with holography.
Well, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
The exact opposite problem from what I encountered in the musical instrument. In the musical instrument,
exactly.
You're trying to support vibrations, and in holography, you're trying to damp vibrations, and it's the exact opposite task. However, all the math is the same.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. Now, anyone can come to the forum and read any of the posts, but they do have to register in order to make posts of their own. That's correct.
Yeah, that's right. In the beginning, we let everybody post that wanted to come across the website, but one of the things we've learned is that the more information that you offer about yourself as far as what location you're at, what your interests in holography are, the more we can offer you. And so I do require people to register, but all I ever get from them is their email address.
Yeah.
And anything else they offer is really up to them.
Yeah. So if someone that's listening to this wants to become an active member of the forum, you'll have to register, but you can certainly go over to holographyforum.org and go through all the posts and even an archive of posts that go back to the very beginning. Yes,
every post is available. The original posts you can no longer reply to. We started at a company called Network 54, and all of those posts we archived over. I'm very, very fortunate to have had the help from a user who uses the name HoloM. He wrote some scripts that allowed us to import all of those scripts,
wow.
all of those posts, and we're able to actually access those and search those with our search parameters. But for technical reasons, we chose not to allow anybody to reply to them.
Yeah.
We'd rather have somebody start a new post on the same subject.
Okay. Now, you've actually grown much beyond just an informal group of Internet enthusiasts that are posting at a forum and have become more of a formal group with what I believe is the Porcelain Cat Group. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that was kind of an odd thing. That just happened spontaneously, where one day we were all saying, it's fun talking on the Internet, but we'd really like to meet each other, and we'd really like to share some of the things we've been working on in person, because you don't get a chance to understand the personalities that are involved until you actually sit in a room with somebody and, share a coffee or share a pint of beer and say, hey, what is it about you? Why is it that you want to be involved? And we decided that, hey, why don't we get together? Why don't we meet? And we needed a name for this group that was going to encompass more than technical holography and more than artistic holography, but also something that was brand new, something that you really built the foundations of, and that was amateur holography as a group.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to get together and say, you know what, we can be outside of SPIE. What we can really do is build something that is simply holography and simply here to disseminate information. And the name came up as the Porcelain Cat Group, which is sort of an odd little derivation from Graham Saxby's book, Practical Holography, where he uses a porcelain cat as his test object for every new setup he's doing.
I actually used a porcelain cat for my first hologram.
It's funny, my first holograms were all a porcelain dog. I don't know if you've ever seen the RCA logo, where it's a dog listening to a phonograph.
Victrola, yeah.
Yeah, I have a salt shaker that is that dog.
And
that was my test object for years. And then one day I decided it was too shiny, and now I have a porcelain cat.
Oh, I see. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your get-togethers. I understand that they've become a little bit more formal than just having a cup of coffee, and you have individual members that will choose specific topics and give presentations to the other members.
Yes, each of us really have our own little vectors that go off into our research, and I guess that's true of any hobby. And one of the things we decided was that one of the ways to entice people to come together and to share the information that they have was for each of us to make a semi-formal presentation. I don't know if I'd quite call it a formal presentation of what we've been working on. And at the first meeting, there's only been two, but at the first meeting we, sort of requested anybody who might have something to talk about to make a formal presentation. And we each put together formal presentations. At the meeting, the lectures were, amazingly enlightening as far as how much research people have actually done into things, and the tangents that each of us have taken were so far away from where the others of us have been that it was remarkable. And we scheduled 2 days' worth of these lectures, and when we got to the second day, we just kind of looked at each other and said, let's get into the lab and let's make some holograms. And we ended up dividing off into two groups. One group did some silver halide work, and the other group did some DCG work. And we were able to bounce between the two groups and really came up with some very fun holograms, really learned a lot about what was going on. One of the groups, I ended up mastering a silver halide hologram, which turned out to be Michael Harrison ended up making copies of. I did a transmission master.
Okay.
And Michael Harrison made copies of, which became gifts for all of us that attended.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was really very nice.
Yeah.
It was really fun. I got to work with a holographer who had been working, mostly in isolation, and he didn't know any of just the random tricks that, for me, seemed obvious. Like he was measuring all of his beam paths from the first beam splitter, whereas I'd only measure one beam path or 2 beam paths rather from each beam splitter,
Mm-hmm.
and it was saving me time. And I was using a piece of string as opposed to
A tape measure.
a tape measure,
Yeah.
which is what's the first thing that's obvious, but a piece of string is actually a lot faster.
Yeah.
And there were some other things, like he was calculating the focal length of his collimation mirror, whereas I would just take a piece of paper and measure the diameter of the mirror and hold it back as far away as I needed to, and move the spatial filter until the illumination filled that mirror.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
And, there were just little tricks like that we all got to share.
Well, I really admire the fact that you and your folks were able to put that together, because it's something that I had been thinking about doing, contemplating doing, and even started to launch ideas on getting something like that together years ago, and I just failed at doing it. And I think basically what it did with me is it allowed me to say, you know what, you've got to take a look at your strengths, you have to take a look at your weaknesses, and you have to acknowledge both. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging weaknesses. And putting something together like that for me was just something that I couldn't do. So it's glad that you guys were able to do that.
Well, and you know what? For us, we have 125 members. We have 25 members that I would say are looking at every post every few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And what we actually decided was that all of us have our weaknesses, but as a group, we could concentrate on our strengths and put it together.
Yeah.
There's no way in the world I could have put together a group of people to make a meeting like that happen.
Yeah.
It's just not possible, for me as an individual. But as the group of us, we were actually able to each divide it up into the tasks that we could do.
Yes.
Michael Harrison was so instrumental in putting together the first meeting. He really took it on as a task, hosted it.
That was at his home, is that correct?
Yeah, in his home with his lab, and just did a wonderful job of it. And, it's fun to talk to him now about it, because at the time we're thinking, my gosh, Michael's doing such a great job. And the way he describes it is, 2 weeks before this event happened, I wasn't sure if anybody was going to show up. I didn't even know what to do. And we're new, and it is the beginning of something that I hope will become a great thing. Holography is completely vacant now of having places to show big art exhibitions.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Or anything. We have some wonderful artists that have been around for 30 years now that are producing what I think is fantastic work,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody knows about it. Nobody has a way to find it.
And we have some wonderful artists that have only been around for 2 years that are producing fantastic work.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're getting the lessons of the old artists.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that eventually, that maybe 2 or 3 years from now, when you come to a PCG convention, that what you're doing is you're meeting not only the holographers that are part of holographyforum.org, but you're also meeting the holographers that have been around for 30 years, that have had a huge body of work, that just want to show their newest things,
Mm-hmm.
and are excited still about holography. Holography in the 80s was such an exciting thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to be a part of it because I wasn't around then. I was too naive to know how exciting it was. But there was so much money from industrial backers and things that everybody was excited about it. And in the 90s, it just kind of fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
The big development in the 90s was the diodes and how, literally for $100 now, somebody can put together a lab and make holograms.
Yeah.
And they can take a diode laser and make that happen. And nobody knew that.
What about your own work? What have you been doing with some of your projects?
Well, my latest little addition to my shop is I've decided that the future of my holographic work is true color holography, and it is overhead reference beams.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working horizontally for a really long time, And as a theatrical lighting designer, I love playing with lighting, with my object lighting. And the only way I can really do that and get it into my head in the same way that theatrical lighting works is to have overhead reference beams.
I see.
So my newest table now is 4 feet by 8 feet, 10 inches thick of aluminum honeycomb, all made out of scrap honeycomb out of Boeing, and with a 3-foot-tall gantry above it that runs my whole reference beam. I now have a 50 milliwatt red diode that I'm using, as well as a 100 milliwatt coherent 315M DPSS laser. So I've got the red and green aspects of my 3-color system, and I'm just trying to decide now what I'm going to do about blue. Blue DPSS is just remarkable when you can get it in the coherence lengths, but it's also $30,000.
Yeah.
That's my ultimate goal. There's some people around that have been finding these blue DPSSs that emit beams out of both ends of the cavity, and you can use those. You get about 100 milliwatts out of one of the beams, and you can find them for about $3,000 if the diode array has burned out.
Yeah.
But the diode array is about $4,000 to replace.
Yeah.
So it's still very expensive. I can't decide what I'm going to do. I go back and forth where one day I say, I'm going to have to get a blue DPSS because 473 nanometers is just the frequency I want. And then I look around and I say, for $3,500 and a lot of infrastructure into my lab, I can get an argon laser.
Yeah.
So I haven't quite come up with a solution for blue yet.
And we still need patience, with this field.
You really do.
Absolutely.
And that's, I guess, the understatement of a lifetime, Frank, is that not only do you need patience, but you need just an infinite amount of patience. I've had so many just random things go wrong that takes forever to figure out, like the temperature of my processing baths wasn't quite right, and I wasn't getting the results that I'd been, if I look through my notes, all the results are right, but I'd never bothered to measure the temperature of my processing baths.
Is this with DCG or silver?
In silver, yeah. And all of a sudden one day my lab is at 60 degrees and nothing's developing this time. And I keep increasing my exposures. Now I'm overexposing, underdeveloping, and I'm getting bad results.
Yeah.
It's funny, all of the things that crop up. When I'm dealing with newcomers, and I'm sure you've dealt with way more newcomers than I have, one of the things that comes up repeatedly is the patience it takes to make stability happen.
Yeah.
The level of stability we need to make long exposure holograms is just phenomenal. And it's so outside of the realm of common experience that it amazes me that anybody figures it out, much less that I did.
Yeah. Well, you're doing nice work. Now, you also have a section of that holography forum where people can show the work that they've created as well, right?
Yeah, there's a gallery there. It really requires you to have some internet space that you can store your work on and link to. I haven't really gotten it to the point. It's something I would like to do in the future, but I haven't gotten it to the point where you can just say, hey, this is a photo on my hard drive, I want to show it, and you can upload it, and I actually pay for the hosting space for those photos.
Yeah, and also the transmission of them as well, so you have to take that into consideration. You probably have a limit on how much data you can transmit per month, I imagine, right?
I do have a limit, but the forum costs about $20 a month to host.
Yeah.
And we're using about 1/100th of our bandwidth.
Okay.
So there's a huge amount of space in that regard, and I'm not really concerned about that. Fortunately, about every 2 months, somebody comes along and says, hey, I really value what you're doing, and I really want to support you. And they, there's a link on the splash page of the site that allows you to send me $20 to support the forum for a month.
Yeah.
And it turns out that I end up paying for about a half of it, and the people that come to the site end up paying for about a half of it.
And I'd like to encourage everyone to click on that link and send you $20 for the 2005 season that you're coming up on.
Well, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
more than the actual money, I would love the people to just show up and share the work and get excited about holography, because it's our excitement as amateurs that's going to take holography through the next 20 years.
Yeah.
It's not going to be any big corporate sponsor. It's not going to be anything. It's really us as amateurs that are going to carry holography through.
Yeah, and that's how it's been, actually.
And that's how it's been since the 80s.
There's been a lot more excitement, I think. Of course, I may be prejudiced to this, but I think there's a lot more excitement in amateur holography that's happened in the last 10 years than any other aspect of holography.
Well, and I hope that's true. I look at, the dot matrix holograms that are coming out now, and I look at the work that Liddy's doing with their high-end holograms, and I look at the work that you're doing as an amateur, or I don't know if calling you an amateur is quite the right word.
I'm a professional amateur.
You're the most experienced amateur. How about if we say that? Your equipment, you're seconds away from doing the level of work that Liddy's doing, and you're exploring all of those LCDs and all of that work, and what separates you from Liddy is they're trying to make a living at it, and you're just trying to disseminate it to people who just want to be fascinated by it and explore it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to make holograms exciting.
Yeah, I have all those little mini portraits that I put the process up on the website. I have all of those of my kids, and they're one of my biggest treasures as they continue into adulthood now, to look back at those.
Well, and portrait work is stunning. It's remarkable. I when you started, you had a little forum that you started that was sort of designed to teach everybody how to do portraits.
Yeah, which went nowhere.
Well, unfortunately,
and probably my fault by not doing what you do with yours as far as being a good moderator. Once again, recognizing a weakness.
Well, I don't know if I think you're shortchanging yourself. I think that what you did was really good. It sort of inspired the beginning, and I think a lot of people are working along that line. And I wish there was better communication amongst the individuals that are actually walking down that road at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's come up is we would love to have you host us, because you have more to show than any of us.
Oh, I don't know. You may come out here and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I spent money on airfare to go to this guy's place."
That's
serious.
That's not going to be how it is at all.
Yeah. I'd love to come and meet everybody.
Well, you know what? What that says to me is that the next meeting needs to be on the East Coast, because we need to have you attend.
Oh, thank you.
You're one of the most gifted people that I think we could ever have lecture to us.
Well, thank you. I don't fly, and that's really cut a lot of opportunities for me.
You don't fly.
I flew for the first time because I wanted to finally do it, and I flew for the first time only 2 or 3 years ago, which would have made me, I'm going to be 49, so it would have made me maybe about 47 years old the first time I got on a plane. Went up to Boston because I figured it'd be a quick trip from Philadelphia, only like in 90 minutes or something, and the trip there was exhilarating. The takeoff. I never experienced such power in a jet and everything. It was really great. But then on the way back, there were grounded flights because of severe thunderstorms, and the flight back was absolutely, I swear to God, I thought I was going to die. I thought we were all going to die, and it was the worst 90 minutes of my life, and that was it. That was my first and only flight that I will ever take, ever. That's it. I'm done. But I'll drive anywhere. I drive down to Florida. It doesn't. The last trip I did down to Florida, I did it 16 hours straight. I love to just put it on a cruise and listen to the talk shows, and I just take extra time to drive. California's too far for me to drive, though.
It's a long trip out to California from where you are.
We're running on fumes here as far as time to keep this file size manageable for people, because believe it or not, there are quite a few people that are still on dial-up connections that access this, so I try and keep the the show within a reasonable amount of time. Is there anything that you want to add that we haven't talked about yet?
You know, the thing that I would add is I'm not sure if it's come across in the private communications that you and I have had, but you are personally the reason why I am involved in holography, and it was encountering your website that got me started in holography after 20 years of being on the back benches of just reading about the technology. If it wasn't for you, your website, and the research you've done, I would still simply be a poor person hoping to one day make a hologram.
Well, I'll take that to heart. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't know. It's a very, very nice compliment, and I appreciate you making it. And I do believe that your own contributions to amateur holography for students, for those who would be like, you see those magazines, Popular Photography or whatever, I think you're doing the exact same thing, only with holography. Maybe it's time to pass the torch.
Well,
you know what I mean? I'm an old man now, you know. I'm not a young guy anymore like you guys. I see the pictures of you guys. You're all young guys, you know. So
you know what we're doing, though, is we're spreading the torch. It's not yet time to pass the torch. I'm still giving you 40 more years to contribute to this field.
Yeah, I still have a good bench press, so I'm not going anywhere too soon. But all right, I'm going to close and probably head up to bed shortly.
Okay, Frank.
Tonight and call it an early night.
I know we've rambled on and given you way more information.
Oh, it was great. It was great to finally have some time to chat, because you know we've known each other for a while and we've sent a couple of emails back and forth. But as far as actually chatting, I don't think we've really had the opportunity to do what we did tonight, and I'm thankful for it.